Thank you. So we're going to start. Morning, all. Today, November 24th, 2020. Welcome to the Regional Conference on Migration, an activity within the work group on labor migration. We're going to have the closing virtual ceremony on the program against sexual exploitation, abuse, and for humanitarian aid organizations. This is done by IOM, Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, and Interagency Standing Committee. This was approved by the Labor Migration Working Group. And thank you to IOM for this training and to you in these last 2 weeks that have been dedicating your time to be trained. This training program has had a very interesting modality, both via virtual conferences and virtual courses that you took in the iCampus. Also, we started panels last week and we are going to close them today. So right now, I would like to add my voice to the call made by these programs. Let's say no to sexual misconduct. Now we're going to have Carmen Cepeda from IOM, who is coordinating this regional project, and she's going to introduce the moderators and panelists that will be participating and who are going to be giving us other input on this topic. So once again, thank you very much. And I can support you. Just chat me if needed, but this is your space. So, Paula, go. Well, thank you all for being with us again today. I think that we have started this almost a month ago, and this last month we have been covering different stages. And I think it is very important to recognize the effort that you, the participants, have made. And I want to really thank you for this effort because it has been an investment of time, emotion. It has been taxing emotionally, looking at perspective of types of conducts on which we may not have that many opportunities to discuss. But I think that we're also learning new concepts, and the program's methodology has allowed us to share in different stages, both the webinars and the online course on sexual misconduct, and that the courses that we were able to take in the iCampus platform, and this closing webinar where we will be able to reinforce any or even discuss any topic that was not that clear. It's going to be a very interesting dynamic today. We are going to be sharing with a platform and a panel with colleagues from UNDP, IOM, and ILO. And Rosen Borland, is specialist in protection, is going to be moderating. And then we will open the microphones. In other words, we'll give you the floor so you can share some of your experiences, work experiences, and also share experiences on how you have lived through this training program. Concepts ought to be highlighted, and some methodology that were carried out during the process was very interesting to hear you discuss the different topics and how you have been able to take ownership of the topics. For example, differences between sexual exploitation or harassment or abuse in the different aspects, especially the workplace, and I think it has been very appropriate to discuss it. And I was really glad to be able to hear the reflections on the course on migrant women, reflections you had on the labor migration course. So we are taking a lot of knowledge with us, which has been the objective all along of this program, which has been supported by the work group on labor migration and led by the Costa Rican PPT. And I really want to thank the team of the presidents pro tempore, Laura Sanchez and Eugenia Victor, who have been also supporting us. Also, thank to all the technical secretariat. The team has been great, especially Renan, Marisol, and Luis Alonso, who have been with us throughout the whole process. And you, of course, our participants, who have been able to contribute all your knowledge and experience. And we were able to hear about the different tools that you use in your countries. Lyle also, thank you very much because she has helped us with her methodology and trying to make it as user friendly as possible. I'm not going to take any more time. I am going to welcome everybody and Rosalind Borland, who's the specialist, and she's really, really happy because she knows that we have made a gigantic step forward with this. And I know this is not going to be the first nor the last program. There are many topics we want to support for the prevention of misconduct and prevention of violence against women and gender based. We talked a lot about gender during the course, and I really like that we have gender so clear. When we're talking about gender, it's not only women, we should be inclusive of all the people. We're talking about men, women, LGBTIQ plus, etc. So I'm going to basically give the floor that we don't have that much time. So Rosalind, welcome, and you have the floor. Thank you, Paola. Welcome, everybody. It's a privilege to be able to moderating this virtual conference panel. As Paula said and Luis Alonso said, the idea is to have brief presentations of people with a lot of experience and expertise from UNDP, ILO, and IOM. And then we're going to have a little bit more interactive period. And the panelists, please try to take between 10 and 15 minutes each. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat so we can include them in the comments. So without further ado, the first panelist, Maria Atteta from ILO, a business graduate from Harvard in 1985 and in 1999 after a career in private sector and NGOs and went to ILO as officer from IPEC program, for Latin America, and officer for integration of decent work in programs and policies of other agencies. She is adjunct officer of the Sub-Regional Office for Haiti, Panama, and Dominican Republic, and Andean countries. She is a gender specialist and non-discriminatory specialist of the ILO, IPEC office from Central America, Panama, and Dominican Republic. Maria, welcome, and you have the floor. Morning. Thank you, Rosalind. I want to thank first and foremost to the RCM and IOM for this invitation, inviting ILO. It's been great. And I would want to congratulate you for this course. Looks quite interesting and quite useful. I have been asked to talk about the Convention 190 about violence and harassment at the workplace. I have a small presentation, so please let me know when you see my screen, my desktop. Not yet. Go with share screen, and then you have to choose the application, a window for application or something. I am learning to use this new system now. There's always something new. And it is, and now we can see it. And talking about Convention 190 and Recommendation 206, I'm going to be brief. And I'm going to go quickly through some of the slides, but I wanted to share with you the information. And with the organizer, I'm going to give you the presentation. This is a tripartite organization, ILO. We work on international labor regulations. Harassment and violence is something that has been discussed within the organization for several years because a phenomenon that is quite broad, unfortunately. And there was a tripartite discussion between government, employers, and employees about sexual harassment. But when discussion started, this discussion is then expanded to violence and harassment at the workplace because violence is quite extensive in the workplace and it's incompatible with the sustainable development goals. Migrants, of course, are a greater danger because they're usually less protected. Convention 190 and recommendation number 2206 want to make visible all the rights of everybody to be able to live free of harassment and an opportunity to have international regulations in this regard. ILO has several instruments. Conventions are basically international treaties that, if freely ratified by the countries, is binding. And the recommendation is not binding, but it gives us more information and orientation on how to implement the convention. It is quite broad, the definition of violence and harassment. And you can see that it says that is a set of behaviors and practices that are unacceptable or threats of such behaviors and practices. Doesn't matter if it's manifested once or repeatedly, and the purpose is to cause or may be able to cause physical, psychological, sexual, or economic damage or harm, and includes violence and harassment due to gender aspects. First time ILO is including gender here. It is a really broad definition, includes mobbing, physical violence, sexual violence or harassment, and economic violence. And the convention defines violence and harassment due to gender, which is violence and harassment aimed at people based on their sex or gender, or which affect disproportionately to people of a given gender or sex, and includes sexual harassment. And of course, that it disproportionately affects women and girls. It is a new generation of conventions in its broad scope, which applies to all sectors, public, private, protects workers. And it's quite interesting because for the first time, it includes people who are requesting employment. Usually they can be victims of sexual harassment or interns or retired people or any new modalities such as the sharing economy, as we call it, the gig economy. So it's a new generation of conventions that defines work in a much broader sense. In addition, it also defines where this can happen, this violence, this harassment. It can be to or from work. In other words, going to the workplace or coming from the workplace, or even during a virtual communication, they can be harassed. Or when they are going to not only the workplace, but any activity that is work related, including social activities. So, what does the convention do? It is a broad scope that tries to protect people in this new workplace, which is an extended workplace, which includes virtual workplace and people in new work relations. And this, of course, includes migrants in this labor situation, whether they are regular or irregular migrants. And then we talk about prevention, how they should be prevented, how to be controlling, and resources to be applied. And we need to have training, of course, and guidance on this. I'm not going to say everything, but let's see how we protect migrants with this convention. In prevention and protection says that we need to pay special attention to sector occupations or work modalities that are at the highest risk of exposure to violence and harassment. And migrants are among the people, sectors, and occupations, such as agricultural or domestic work, are the ones that are the most vulnerable to this type of situations. Also mentions the obligations of the state to have mechanisms and procedures for the notification and solution of conflicts. So the state should assume this responsibility. For example, there's going to be an investigation, conflict resolution mechanisms, and by covering all all this broad population, the state must guarantee these resources to all. It should also be proportional to the conflicts and assistance, and that it also goes for reparations. In training and guidance, it aims at the creation of a broad information and training system, not only for employees and also for the workers in the justice system with best practices and recommendations. So the legal sector, the justice sector, and the government officials are aware of workplace violence and harassment and have the suitable mechanisms to respond to this. And the last measure, which would be of interest, we need programs that approach these factors that increase the probability of violence. In other words, the underlying factors that make migrants more vulnerable to situations of violence and harassment. All member states must submit this agreement, this convention, to their authorities for ratifications. 12 states have ratified it. Fiji, Uruguay, Argentina has also ratified it, but has not deposited at the ILO. Fiji and Uruguay since they ratified in June this year. Now the agreement or the convention will be applicable 1 year afterwards. In other words, it will be applicable in June 2021. So we should be also demanding ratification of this convention in our countries if it hasn't been done so, and will give us an extra mechanism, extra protection to be able to demand from states, from employers, the protection of all workers, including migrant workers, against workplace violence and harassment. Thank you. Thank you. Really interesting presentation, and for indicating the convention and these new spaces where we can work, emphasizing migrant workers, and of course the recommendations on the state's obligations in this regard. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. I suggest we continue with the presentations, but knowing that Maria has to leave beforehand, so maybe she can answer a couple of them before she leaves. Yeah, so the second one, Michela Machiavello, she's a regional specialist in labor, migration, and human development, then the regional office of the IOM in San Jose. Michela is responsible for North, Central America, and the Caribbean. In her previous work, she specialized in assistance and protection of vulnerable migrants, especially victims of trafficking, including crisis situations. She has also worked in topics regarding migration and border management in the Caribbean, the training of civilian personnel in peacekeeping for the University of Lebron, Ghana, and in Uganda for refugee as an investigator for the Center of Study on Refugees of Oxford University. She has a master's in migration study from the Sussex University and a licentiate degree on the School of Asian and African Studies in London University. Michela, you have the floor. Your microphone is off, Michela. We can't hear you. I can, we cannot hear you yet. Let's give her a few seconds so she can refresh. Yeah, it appears to be a connection issue. Yeah. Let's see if we have any questions for our first panelist. And thank you, everybody, for your patience. And I think we have, yeah. Can you hear us, Michela? We are not hearing. I think Renan is saying you have to select it in Kudo. Now we can hear you. So I'm going to share my screen again. So Rose can, yeah, okay. Now we can see and hear you. It is a pleasure being with you. It is a very particular course, as Paula said. our colleagues have made it to the end with a lot of success. So I'm really happy for you. It is a short presentation focusing on labor migration and especially how to prevent and increase protection against labor abuse and exploitations for migrant workers with an approach to gender. This presentation, first we're going to see data on migration and situation vulnerability of some gender groups. Two graphs that I have from a survey IOM did this year in June on the effects of COVID-19 on migrant workers, especially women. Then we're going to see a manual focusing on mainstreaming gender in guidance sessions previous to departure. We're talking about migrants who are ready to move due to labor aspects. And then we're going to see the recommendations of this manual. First, some data on migrant workers in the region. As we said in June, IOM had a survey on the effects of the pandemic in migrants from Central America and Mexico. It was a very simple survey that gave us a lot of information. I suggest you read it. It is uh, available. You can search for it, effects of COVID-19 on migrant population, and you can Google that and find this survey. The most interesting data, if you focus on the left, where you have the columns, the blue columns, you can see that women are overrepresented in domestic services and informal sale of food. These are sectors that are considered informal with a low level of formality, which means that when we have low level or no level of formality, there's also low level of social protection against abuse, exploitation, and violence. Another graph, another very interesting graph is we are focusing on the left, the graph proper. You see that most migrants that have been interviewed, women are in blue. 51% of parties interested would accept working abroad even without understanding fully the terms and conditions. In other words, this package of things that could lead to exploitation, abuse, and even violence. These are very important details. Although this is focusing on women, you can also can see that they have a greater facility to face situations of vulnerability and abuse. I want to read this slide with you. Although men and boys also face issues with protections, women and girls and other gender groups, LGTBI, can be exposed to particular protection issues related with their gender, cultural position, and socioeconomic and legal status, which means they have less option to exercise their rights. So we need concrete actions in favor of women, girls, and other gender groups are necessary to ensure that they can enjoy protection assistance on equal footing with men and boys. So this presentation, I want to give you this manual where we have it in labor migration, mainstream gender, and to help migrants who are arriving in Europe so they can increase the level of protection and minimize and or reduce the challenges they would or are facing in the destination country. And previous orientation or pre-departure orientation sessions have been recognized as essential to help them understand their rights, responsibilities, and obligations, prevent abuse, exploitation, and violence. This manual focuses on different gender groups, women, young women, and LGBTQI community, and it's given to them before they depart. And it has been also useful to train trainers, cultural mediators, project managers, coordinators, and focal points, for example, at NGOs, at government agencies, etc. One of the reasons why I think this manual can help us all, it is because it focuses on both aspects. On the left, we see how we can mainstream gender through logistics of these sessions. To start with a gender focus. In the organization of these sessions, organize training, paying attention to gender, to the logistics that are attached to a course, like using a place where we can train women and where we can have, for example, childcare or have hours that is suitable for this group. Women have children or cannot leave the house. We can give them differentiated hours so they can attend, or to empower different gender groups during the training in order to have active participation of the different gender groups in a comparable way on equal footing. Help participants to express their needs during formation or training, and in the session to make sure to respect a gender balance with the facilitators. On the right, we have the content of the course. As I put in yellow, we have to consider a mainstreaming of gender throughout the course. Because in the second point, our achievement will be to awaken the understanding on gender and how to help them understand before they leave about the roles and the concepts, for example, gender-based violence, analyze the rights and obligations in the welcoming communities, and what the risk may be, analyze the risk connected or related to the workplace in the destination country which may include violence, exploitation, fraud, trafficking, unethical work, etc. And before they leave, identify institutions in the destination country that can help these victims with legal counsel, assistance, police, or healthcare if need be. And also inform them about the risks they can face, such as discrimination by the employer regarding salary, labor rights, etc., and how to respond to these abuses, which are the institutions that they can recur to or approach if they have this type of issue. And for us, and when we are helping or defending migrants, we have to evaluate our sessions, our training sessions. Are we sure that the techniques and the context have been useful to everybody equally? Are all groups actively benefiting and have the same level of interest and participation and trust or confidence in the sessions? Well, we need then to gather information differently. We can have group discussions, but I also favor individual surveys or interviews, which give us a space, a private space, where a participant can give us his or her direct feedback, and we can not only jot down information for the next section, but if there's something that we can do for this person, we can do it. And we have a written evaluation, and we have a previous session before departure. Keep contact with participants after their departure so we can give them any support if they face difficulties. And another issue to be aware of is that trainers have to be exchanging information and lessons learned among themselves. For example, we do it often with Rose and the other regional specialists, so effectively we can learn from each other. This presentation is ending, but before that, I would like to underscore once again with this last slide why these training sessions are so important. Because if possible, to be given these training sessions for pre-departure migrants uh, who can be even ready to leave for another country, we can increase their level of protection, but also decrease or even eliminate any potential abuse they might face in the destination country, especially for gender-based groups that are often in a situation of vulnerability. As Paula said, not only about talking about women. That's why I have a picture of young migrant workers, because we're talking about young people. We're talking about LGBTIQ people and people with disabilities. But I underscore the importance of giving migrant workers this possibility. And we have to try to prevent and protect themselves in the destination country. And thank you very much. And I'm going to be here for the Q&A session. Thank you for the presentation, Michela, especially the data on the survey that tells us what the different risks that people may have. And for example, women saying that they basically would accept work without knowing fully all the terms and conditions, and what we can try to do to prevent this, including violence. Remember, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And now, the last panelist, Sebastian Sayer, he is a regional coordinator on projects against violence against women and children, feminicide, and citizen security for gender for the Regional Center of Central American Area for UNDP. Isayak is a graduate of political science by the El Salvador University in Argentina and master's in administration and public policy of San Andres University, Argentina. Over 20 years experience in development. He has worked in the public sector in Argentina and then specialized in public policy with gender focus and elimination of violence against women and girls, feminicide, and citizen security in the region. Within the UN system, has worked with UNPA, UN Women, UNDP, and Financial Fund for the elimination of violence against women in different countries in the region. So it's a pleasure to introduce Sebastian, and you have the floor, Sebastian. Thank you for the presentation. Welcome and greetings from the UNDP Regional Center. And of course, to all of you, welcome. Very grateful on behalf of UNDP for this invitation. I'm going to share a presentation that Lielis, we have the presentation because I cannot. Okay, from presentation. So, so we see the first slide. The presentation is going to be around of the experience of migrant women and girls, both regular and irregular, in Latin America and the Caribbean, from a rights focus, gender perspective, and retaking what Paula was saying in the beginning. Gender perspective has to be relational one, including men and women, and with different gender identities, and having a cross-sectional perspective, recognizing different perspective due to class, ethnic origin, sexual orientation, nationality, and others. We start from the premise that women and girls who are migrating have a special exposure to other types of discrimination and violence, including sexual violence, and extreme violence, including feminicide. And UNDP has designed an investigation on violence against women and feminicide or femicide, and within the migration control, within the Spotlight Initiative. So briefly, for those who don't know about the Spotlight Initiative, is a worldwide association between EU and UN to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls. It is led globally and implemented around the world with regional and national programs. In the regional program for Latin America, the focus is prevention, assistance, and reparation of different types of violence against women, both public and private sectors, and especially it is focusing on the eradication of femicide or violent death of women due to gender. Although it's regional in scope, the main focus is in Central America and Mexico, basically given the prevalence of the death of girls and women and the interface of this phenomenon with others very complex phenomena which have been poorly studied, like organized crime, migratory flows, structural poverty and violence, forced disappearances, etc. This is a bit of the framework that includes a series of studies. And in the next slide, we have the UNDP proposal to work with the Spotlight Initiative. We have multidimensional studies of femicide in Latin America. I cannot go in depth, but we have an architecture of 9 studies, well, 8 studies and a private sector initiative, or initiative with the private sector. And from this portfolio, we have 2 specific studies that analyze this interface between violence against women and femicide and migratory context, both in regular and irregular migration. The first and foremost objective is not to gather dust, is to support governments and civil society organizations to strengthen legal instruments and the development of public policy based on evidence to fight or face these very complex scenarios. We don't have a lot of information, or we have a lot more in domestic violence. But in a very complex context, such as migratory context, the information is lacking. So in the next slide, I'm going to share 2 of the studies that are focused on violence against women and femicide in the migratory context. First, effects and consequences of migratory processes on incidents of violence against women and girls and femicide. And I can give you some preliminary findings to try to strengthen different instruments, including legal policies that approach this particular subject. On the one hand, tell you that one of the first findings is that violence against women and girls who are migrants is a continuum. It's before, during, and after the movement. Or so different ways in which violence is expressed against them. Very slight to moderate to extreme, such as violent death. The second finding of this study, which is right now collecting data and for which we have the support of IOM for the different products of this consulting work and technical and methodological support. And really, we thank IOM for supporting us in this regard. The second of the preliminary findings is that the role of the state is central, both for the protection of women and girls against this violence, as well as the design of policies that would reduce the risk of violence against them and allowing them to access justice and violence prevention and assistance. For us, we know in gender theory, and especially violence against women, the 4 axes, which is prevention, care, punishment, and reparation of the rights that have been violated. And these 4 axes are there, and the state must fulfill its role regarding all of them. As per the Convention of Belém do Pará, to have effective response against or violence against women and girls. Third finding is that violence against women and children is one of the main reasons for the expulsion of them, especially in the northern triangle, when they have to leave their countries due to the increase of violence rates against them. And of course, this will have an impact on migration. And given this topic, sexual violence is one of the most troubling issues. For example, sexual violence, we go from before to during to after the migration process. They are the victims of different types of sexual abuse, including their family members as perpetrators. And then you also have harassment on the street or sexual harassment in different stages of the migration process during the migration route in the destination country, where sexual violence is still a constant experience for women and girls, inclusive. Many women and teenagers know about this before they depart. They include as part of their elements kits for prevention or care if they are subject to violence. And for migrant women, it is very difficult to prevent violence being escalated. That's another finding. So during the migration route, as a continuum, you see these different forms of violence and which escalate and which are in addition to discrimination, family disintegration, economic hardship, and the tolerance of institutions and organizations regarding these conducts, regarding especially sexual violence, harassment against women and girls. The next slide is something regarding challenges and realities in the workplace. Also, lack of opportunities is one of the causes of women having to leave their countries of origin and then having to face these new uh, experiences of discrimination and violence. In destination countries, a significant proportion of women go to the informal sector uh, using verbal contracts, no protection, and working in conditions that are really subhuman. And with the pandemic, many women have lost their jobs because usually it's due to the concentration of women in the informal sector and some of the sectors most affected by the pandemic. And discrimination and xenophobia has also been rampant against women because they are supposed to be carriers of the virus and a contagion risk. So they're potential transmitter of the virus, which goes deeper into the situation of vulnerability, which is still hardship in normal times. So we have had some good practices or best practices where Mexico and Costa Rica give work permits to asylum seekers while they wait for the formalities to be concluded or for the process to be concluded. And Mexico and Costa Rica allowed them in to cushion a bit the situation of vulnerability in which these women are. If we go to the second study, it is a study that is evaluating the needs of people in situation of mobility. And this study is in a preliminary stage. It doesn't have the same level of development, so we still don't have the findings in the previous study. We don't have that much data collected yet, but the aim of the study is to understand the characteristics and conditions for access of a livelihood, if you will, for migrant women in Central America, Mexico, in Dominican Republic from 2010 and to 2020, and we are considering violence and especially sexual violence as one of the negative factors that prevent women from accessing means to earn a living. Livelihood is a motivator for both men and women, but women usually experience this in a much more acute fashion, especially given discrimination in the migratory process, but also in their countries of origin. The next slide briefly tells you that we are working with the private sectors in the detection of violence against women in different businesses from the Spotlight Initiative. We are working with companies or businesses for gender equality, and we have a sample of companies in the region to review and update the ways in which these businesses are preventing and responding to violence against women, both in the domestic sphere as well as violence or sexual or workplace harassment. Once we identify the need for specific training in this sampling, we are going to develop training model for this particular subjects, and we're going to have a pilot project strengthening the awareness of violence against women in about 10 companies in the region with four main stages. First, we have diagnostic tools to identify the prevalence of violence against women in the organization, both in the domestic and workplace spheres. Then, an action plan to strengthen process and procedures for the prevention internal campaigns and others, and also derivation referral of cases. One of the requirements of the businesses is that they can identify a case of, for example, violence against women, but they don't know what to do with it once they have the information. For example, once a complaint is filed. So we are going to prepare internal processes and procedures that could be standardized to this set of companies to work in a referral. Finally, verification to be able to evaluate the processes, to be able to identify improvements and action plans within businesses, and giving priority the main situations of violence that are experienced in that particular workplace. Of course, we don't have so much time, so we're going to end it here, and your disposal if you have any questions. Thank you. Thank you, Sebastian, for sharing information on the Spotlight Initiative and in the different studies that are so important under the leadership of UNDP. I also want to highlight the importance of the pandemic and its effect, of good practices, and to be able to work on how women and children and others try to earn a living. And before we go with Q&A, can we have the your cameras, turn on your camera so we can have a photograph? I have a lot of mosquitoes here. Well, thank you. Okay, so I want to thank you for this panel So we don't have questions, so we're going to have Paula take the floor. Thank you, Rosalind, for your moderation, and thank you to our colleagues from UNDP and ILO and IOM, and also Maria. She left it, but we're going to have Adriana and representing ILO as well. They have been three excellent presentations that give us other perspectives and tools that are being developed. And we have manuals and conventions, our research and evidence, and we also have new tools being developed, as mentioned by Sebastian, on the training modules for the prevention of violence in the workplace, and this pilot with private companies. It's also been quite relevant, Maria's presentation on the convention 190, which is quite new and novel, and and it would be great to know not only more about that, but also invite the countries for its ratification. Our next moderator is Los Sanchez from Presidency Pro Tempore Costa Rica, who's going to moderate the next panel. And I want to tell you that this is for you. We are thinking about you to be able to open your mics, to be able to ask questions and share what has to deal with best practices in the countries for the prevention of sexual harassment, misconduct, and to be able to share experiences. For us, it is very important to listen to you. This will help us in our support and of any future activities regarding knowledge management training. So, Laura, thank you so much for accepting, for moderating this panel. So, you have the word. So, go. Thank you, and thank you all for this opportunity to be able to participate in this program for the protection of workplace and other forms of aspects of sexual misconduct. And as you said, Paola, this is to finish this program in the way we have been working it, in a participatory manner. We've had over 50 people participating throughout all the steps, and something that has been characterized is active participation. They have talked about their experiences, how they work in their countries, and has helped us enrich this workshop in its different stages. So this is a space for all of us participants to discuss, and you can tell us what are some of the best practices you have and that you can share, and what are, based on this workshop, what you're going to do. Do you have any proposal to develop in your workplace? Also, in the comments we were reading in the participants in this course, we saw some comments that this is going to help you a bit more in hiring. So I want everybody to participate, and please request the floor or chat. Remember, lower right hand side, you just click on request mic, because right now what we want in this next hour is to be able to listen to you, to your feedback on this workshop. So you can request the floor. We Okay, we have a few in the chat, and Julio Aragon wants the floor. Julio, let you start while we look at the questions. Julio, you can open your mic now. Just to comment that this process has left me with a lot of great feelings and a commitment, even above and beyond, because you think that you know quite a bit, but then you see that it is a topic in constant evolution. So that's one of the good things of this process. I want to say, as best practice, that a lot of the review and discussion process makes the topic more accessible, not does not leave this topic in the hands of a few experts. It is something that everybody has to understand, own, and act accordingly. Of course, you have specialized team or decision makers, but there are different manifestations that now you can discern. Before, they could have been overlooked. So I think that we have also broken a bit the silence that this abuse is usually met with, especially when talking about vulnerable populations. You don't have to be a specialist to be aware. And that's another element that in the two processes we had with iCampus and the other. So you don't need more experience or training to be able to prevent sexual abuse and misconduct. So I want to congratulate you, and of course, we will be committed to prevention and punishment of these felonies. Thank you. Thank you, Julio, for these words. We have a question in the chat. Let's see the following. First one from Esther Nunez, Costa Rica. I'd like to know if you have data on migrating women in when they are pregnant. Any issues against them, and if there's uh, obstetric violence against them in destination countries. Also, Patricia Gonzalez, I would like to expand more against or about the violence against pregnant women or obstetric violence. Paola, you have the floor. Thank you, Laura, for these questions. And Rose can also complement. And I think generating evidence will help us have these answers or response. To have specialized studies regarding migrant women will give us more information about these gaps or these additional specific needs. We don't have more data on this. On migrant women who are pregnant, but we've had some cases. One of the recent cases when the pandemic started was a minor. She was an irregular migrant and she was pregnant as well. So we have specific cases and the studies that are being carried out and the investigations also have or carry a healthcare component, which are going to give us more specific figures on the specific issues of migrant women and specific healthcare needs. So we will be able to determine better this. I don't know if Rose would like to add something or we go to the next question. Thank you, Paola. I don't see Rose connected. Or shall we continue? She's asking for Rose. We have you here. Thank you. Just to add that access to healthcare for migrants and refugees is something quite complex. Many countries are focusing on emergency care, but prevention or longer term or chronic treatment is tied to status. I don't have data. We have a specialist that is working on migration and health, but to be able to exercise this right to sexual and reproductive health is a big issue. And thank you for putting on the table, which is also tied to what Sebastian said about a follow up on cases when you need care and especially, for example, medical care due to sexual violence. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to go to all the details. Thank you, Rose. With the chat, we go. Diana Arola on the Spotlight initiative has already been implemented in Mexico. And this initiative, Mariana Angel says, I want to talk in Guatemala has already implemented and ratified convention and Spotlight. Anybody from UNDP can refer to this topic. Sebastian is having a bit of an issue with the internet, so shall we go? So we will go. Diana General Garcia, Mexico. We're going to try to replicate this training with agencies regarding migrants. And of course, for awareness regarding the hiring of migrants. I think it's a great initiative, Diana. You have our support to be able to replicate this training. We would be able to support you, and so you can carry out this course the best way possible. Any other questions? Anybody else? Nobody else? But of course, you are welcome to request the floor and have your comments heard. It would be nice to know whether any countries have best practices they would like to share in this time that we still have for the prevention of sexual misconduct in the respective countries. You have participated quite a bit. Today, it is the last towards the finish line. So go ahead. Now, I think Sebastian had to leave, and I don't have the answers of about Spotlight, but I just shared the link to the global page on Spotlight because what Sebastian was saying, we're talking about the regional effort, but we also have national programs, and that's where you have Mexico and Guatemala's questions. Sorry, I don't have the questions, but I shared the link where you can try to get them. When you see messaging and to the page that Rose is mentioning, and I'm also sorry I do not have those specific answers. Anybody else would like to take the floor? Quickly, we did not put it in the chat, but it's in documents. We have the documents mentioned by Michela, effects of COVID-19 in on migrants. In the documents, you will find it. Thank you, Luis. No, today, yeah, we're kind of shy, huh? Or you can put your question in chat. If not, or you can make a comment on the workshop if you have any suggestions for the next chats. Rosa would like to ask for the floor. So, Rosa, you have the floor. Morning to all. For me, it has been enriching to acquire new knowledge, especially regarding human rights, especially listening to the people who have been quite experienced. It has been very productive, and we hope to continue having these activities to be able to keep helping the rights of everybody. Thank you, Rosa, for those kind words. Do we have anybody else? And I want to say that we are putting the links where you can download the materials for this program. Patricia is also chatting that thank you and congratulations for sharing Unfortunately, I was not able to participate due to technical issues, but really enriching topics. I would also like to invite Lielis Torres to give us her perspective as promoter of some of the stages, what her experience has been with this methodology and this course in particular. Hello, Laura. It is a pleasure, and it has been an enriching experience. The program was created precisely in that was an overdimension of the digital spectrum, if you will see, and considering that participants needed a space where they could have an experience of learning and teaching. And these four stages contemplated active interaction and not only technical mentoring or follow up, but also emotional accompaniment or support. We've had panelists like today in an opening session to contemplate new perspectives. That was the inauguration. And then we had an interactive course, albeit virtual, which had a lot of dynamic participation, expression, the conceptualization of sexual misconduct, to which we have referred throughout the program, and also regarding exploitation, abuse, and harassment, which were shared and compared to misconduct and how emotions play a role in defining whether it's sexual misconduct or just inappropriate behavior. Sometimes it was surprising and allowed us to reflect throughout this training process. And with the mentoring sessions, we had our first technical session, and we know that the interface of the eCampus is quite friendly. We have certain restrictions sometimes by internal security policy to overcome, but we had unconditional support of the eCampus staff, whom we would like to thank. It was really tailored um, care, if you will, or tailored support, which uh, helped us in this marvelous process that we called learned by doing. And then we had access to this self-learning process where we had a forum in the eCampus. Many left their impressions. We have a survey of a satisfaction survey prior to the certification process, and Laura has been great. We have very good comments of officials that are, for example, studying masters or other degrees. It has been a revelation for us. We also have to take this into account, for example, when subcontracting services and the perspective of what vulnerability is from a gender perspective, from the eyes of the victim, the exposure to these risks that they have to experience, and the different agents within the migratory route and transit. And we also saw it from the point of view of an officer, for example. So it was quite inclusive. Thank you, Lielis. As you said, there was a lot of interaction, especially in the workshop that we shared with you before going to the campus, and it has been great experience and new experience for all. We know this has been a different year, where we've had to perform activities differently, carry them out in a different way, and we have had to make changes on the go. And this methodology has been very good, and so they can participate and give experience on daily work and can do it like that. Learn by doing. And so, thank you very much, Lielis, for the support. Julio Aragon is saying we're going to have courses in the e-campus. Is it possible to have other courses, take other courses? Do we have any issue with access? Paola, can you help us answer it? Thank you. And eCampus has been designed specifically, and these courses are fully available. You can take as many as you need, as many as you want. So, what I would like to do is basically invite you to continue registering and taking the courses that you are interested in and that can be useful for you, either for your day-to-day activities or to enrich your own knowledge. So go ahead. No special permit required. You just register a lot of short courses, 3-4 hours long, that can help us conceptualize some of the topics with which you deal every day. Thank you, Paola, for this information. We have the Ministry of Labor of Nicaragua that would like to make a comment. You have the floor. Hello, morning, and on behalf of my colleagues, Dr. Isabel Palacios and Yvette Arias from the inspection departments, and including children, uh, I would like to uh, want to greet you and especially to congratulate you for this training that we have been going through. This is a topic, labor migration. Uh, it is a topic that has been made more visible with a lot of effort. And first line, we've had the IOM has been playing a crucial role, especially in Central America. Given our experience of working with IOM for about 12 years now, we have seen this qualitative jump and we realize that we are learning more and more. It is a really broad topic which compels us, commits us to keep working to approach all the migratory issue from the different angles and the different ways, for example, migrants can be discriminated against, especially women and girls, vulnerability, both from countries of origin, transit, and destination. We've seen that some of that can't even arrive, but not everything is gloomy. There can be a light at the end of the tunnel, and that can be these organizations that are working with world conferences that are reaching binding agreements to comply with legal norms, and that, of course, punish transgressors. Here, talking about Nicaragua's perspective, we could have it as a good practice. We were able to process uh, many migration procedures we were able to complete for about 10 years with Costa Rica within the framework of a bilateral agreement. And we did not have complaints regarding abuse or violence. Our service at the border were good. Now, right now, we are working with Costa Rica to prepare a step by step after signing the binational agreement. Now we are working on a step by step document giving instructions. We are incorporating what we learned on in this workshop to the different topics in this document, both at the origin, registration, transit, arrival, and of course to respect the rights, human rights, of course. So we are working on this, and what we have seen here, what we have studied here, has been very useful, and it's currently being incorporated into the document. And that's going to be the step-by-step document that is going to regulate migration flows between Nicaragua and Costa Rica for agricultural activities. Once again, congrats, and we would like to have these activities repeated. Thank you for your words. I think that effectively of these spaces is not only to have greater knowledge, but what we can implement with and between our countries. Thank you so very much. Saida Hernandez has said that it's an experience that compels us to know more about this and work for the prevention of sexual harassment and sexual misconduct. Madam Campos from El Salvador, thank you for this important space, the experiences, and the material, as well as mentoring. Araceli Romero says that Honduras is thankful for the training perspective and important tools that have been provided to us. And you have clarified a lot of inquiries we had. Glenda Maradiaga said, thank you for your expertise and the methodology. Very dynamic, very proactive. Thank you very much for this training to be able to serve those in vulnerable situations. Greetings from Honduras. Thank you very much to you for sharing your experiences on and your comments on the course. I think it has been a program, a workshop that has allowed us to learn more by doing and to disseminate the knowledge to our colleagues. If anybody else would like to make a comment, you can take the floor. I have another one here. Chat. Comments. Pedro Gallardo. Thank you to Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Panama and RCM for the invitation. Arturo Cortez from Seco of Mexico. Thank you for the training and the content. It is much better to learn by doing, and the practical or practice exercises have been very enriching. I'm taking perspectives and best practice from the region. Then Alfaro from Costa Rica. Thank you for this sharing space. And this is part of what we were looking for as PPT Costa Rica and labor migration and how to do this to share important information that is going to be useful and useful to prevent these topics in our own workplaces. Los Mazariegos, IGM Guatemala, thank you for the training. Anybody else? If not, Paola, you have the floor. Thank you, Laura. I'd like two things. First, today you're very, very shy, huh? And and this has been a really safe space, being able to talk about sensitive issues. And I really, really thank you to have this openness, having these mechanisms, and sharing your best practices. And we are going to have this systematization so you can use it in your daily work. And we still have a couple of minutes, so we could have a country tell us, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and Costa Rica. And I also want you to open your cameras for a group photograph. And we have been meeting, interacting for about a month now. And so we would like to have photographs with everybody. And we would like to open the camera, and we could have a country that we have the mic open. You can look at the floor. Renan is going to help us with the photograph. So let's open our cameras and have this photograph for posterity. This is the first thing regarding sexual misconduct and prevention in the workplace regarding sexual workplace harassment, exploitation, and also all the knowledge that we have gathered. So I cannot see you all. We want to have like a memento of you. And remember, you're the first graduation. You are the first ones who have acquired this knowledge. And also, Mexico, congrats on this dissemination, trying to replicate this. And we can give you all the support that you need from the country, um, the different country offices. So, we have cameras to open the camera. You have a blue button, and then you click on the central button. And so we have 15 maximum. So and so we can have all the participants. And remember, open your camera, and you can open the camera. Now we're going to have Michelle Klein and Raquel Vargas. So we would like to welcome both of them. Paola, welcome, Madam Director. How are you? Pleasure. Thank you for this great work that we are finishing today. Same here. It is a pleasure to have you. Thank you, Michelle, Raquel. Well, it is like we are live, having the snapshots taken. Lieles and Paola, if you can connect, and we will go for the closing remarks. We have Joe Gibush, Charge d'Affaires at interim of the Embassy of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. So if we can introduce him, Paola. So, or Lieles, if you can help us. Joe is going to close the session. So we can start with Madam Michelle Klein, the Director General of IOM, and then Raquel Vargas from the PPT, and then we finish with Joe. Okay, so, so you have the floor. Thank you very much. Welcome to the closing session on the program for the protection against sexual abuse, exploitation, and harassment. I'm happy to be here and greets, and the participants have been our very active protagonists during this whole month, and of course finishing their assignments to complete this program. I want to thank our authorities with us, Raquel Vargas from the PPT of the RCM Costa Rica for 2020, Joe Ganbush, Charge d'Affaires ad interim of the Embassy of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, and Nielis Torres, specialist representing INDP, representative of UN Women, Adriana Hidalgo, specialist from ILO, participating countries from the RCM, observers, members of the UN agency, civil society, Luis Alonso Serrano, Executive Secretary of RCM, and Michela, Rosalind, Paola, and others. And welcome all. So we would like to start hoping that you and your families are safe and sound. Given this humanitarian crisis experienced by our Central American brothers and sisters after two devastating hurricanes have affected their territories, we are in solidarity with all people in situation of risk and vulnerability in the region, and we are committed to continue supporting the countries to save lives, both in disaster response and recovery. From the regional office of the IOM, we recognize the importance of this type of training programs, where we see human rights issues, gender equality, prevention of violence, exploitation, and harassment, sexual nature under the current context that commit us more to generate safe space for training and learning for officers who are carrying out humanitarian aid actions. Thanks to the coordination of strategic allies and the financing of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, we were able to launch the first training program, PSIS, that has benefited over 55 participants from Central America, the Caribbean, Panama, Mexico, and Canada, updating their knowledge and allowing them to replicate the knowledge acquired. We've had representatives from different institutions from member countries, among them the Ministry of the Interior, the Offices of Migration and Foreign Affairs or Foreign National Affairs, Children's Protection, ministries and institutes of women, of security, of labors, foreign affairs, and participating consultants from allied organizations such the PPT and the Executive Secretariat of the RROCM. This diversity has enriched this shared knowledge. Objectives have been achieved. We have been respectful, inclusive, and safe of what we expect. And we hope that you had a very high quality learn by doing training session using virtual platform and with technical support and the expertise. Implementing uh, this with sessions of discussion and self-learning thanks to the eCampus platform. So these live interactions, though virtual, have given us a lot of participation and knowledge in each section. And they have raised an experience, and so we can examine it, the technical circumstance, and provide technical support and even emotional support uh, regarding focal points, giving kind of humanity to the process through this methodology. So sure that your time, discipline, and commitment for this prevention program will have best practices that can be replicated in other spaces, contexts, and even continents. So I want to congratulate you for successfully finishing this training process. And the best way to celebrate would be to celebrate the first anniversary of the regional program for the promotion of social inclusion of women migrants in public policy in Central America and the Dominican Republic for the prevention of violence that is based on gender, which is also commemorating and raise our voice for tomorrow, November 25th, the International Day to eliminate violence against women. We are committed to keep fighting to eradicate violence against women. This is a scourge, which is a worse pandemic that is affecting mankind. Thank you all, and thank you very much. Thank you, uh, Michelle Klein, Regional Director of Regional Office of IUM. Right now, we have the Madam Raquel Vargas on behalf of the PPT. Thank you. Welcome all. And Michelle, a friend, it has been very important, these joint efforts. And Luis Alonso Serrano, thank you very much. And Paola Cepeda, thank you so much for your efforts. And Lielis, that has worked with us. It has been a huge effort that has been made for this course to be achieved. As PBT, we see this program to prevent sexual abuse, harassment, and violence for especially those that are working in humanitarian aid, saying no to sexual misconduct. It has had an important impact on participants who, throughout these activities, have made this an activity that has really benefited from everyone's contributions. 2020 has made us profit, let's say, from virtual platforms. And this learn by doing has been especially relevant, allowing participants to have an experience, even almost like a classroom experience, to guide their response vis-a-vis the situations. Today, it is essential that every country have suitable training and tools to prevent this topic, especially the more vulnerable populations. I have read the comments, of course, and I really like these ones, these comments on the course, and we seem to have lost her. Can yes, it appears that we have lost her. We're going to give her a few seconds to refresh her browser. And we know that we have all gone through this dynamic. It's part of the experience, I think, with a virtual session. And okay, we had an issue with connections. And to continue with the comments, and this is what our courses give us, this very important, very useful information to care for migrant populations. As a student, this has given me more information about for hiring and subcontracting in recruiting, which will allow me to make better decisions when I work in my professional areas. This activity has made its purpose, and I want to thank all participants who have enriched group activities. Also, to thank Paola and Lielis, who have made huge efforts to make this available to the PPT. I also want to Thank the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg and IOM and all our colleagues from the Executive Secretary. Thank you very much for this great effort. I think that the comments on the course say everything. Thank you. Thank you, Raquel, for your kind words. Now we go with Joe, sorry, Galbush. I hope I pronounced it correctly. You can ask for the floor. Click on the blue button, lower right hand side, so you can take the floor, please. So we can listen to your message. Closing remarks. Joe Galbush from the Embassy of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. Please ask for the floor by pressing on the request to speak button. Can you? Yeah, then he was here with us. We have Joe. Please click on the request to speak button, the blue button, when you correct it, and then you can open your camera and microphone so we can hear to your closing remarks. Joe, you may refresh your browser, and you need Google Chrome as a browser. If you have any questions, you can write to my WhatsApp. And remember, Google Chrome is the best browser, and any process you have to refresh, and you press the button. So you can enter. Another option, or he can call you via WhatsApp, and then you can put speakerphone. Let's see if we can have that. Yeah, we are going to do that possibly with the audio. So let's try to use it using WhatsApp. So we are closing this training session on sexual misconduct. We are waiting for Joy Galbush's closing remarks from the Embassy of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. We thank them for their support for this program. And thank you, everybody, for your patience. I would also like to add my thanks to Paola, Michela, Michelle, Plan, PPT, Raquel, and everybody else. We are ready. So let's do testing. Let's see. Joe, can you speak? morning, all. You hear me well? Yeah, yeah, we can hear you. So he can start. So it's a pleasure to be with you today, with all of you who have made possible the organization implementation of this continuous training space for the protection against sexual exploitation, violence, abuse, and harassment. Shout out to our regional partners for the promotion of social inclusion of women migrants in public policy in Central America and Dominican Republic and against violence, gender-based violence. All the partners who have joined together to fulfill their commitment in this space oriented so member countries can enrich their knowledge between the link of women, migration, and development. And special greetings to Michelle Klein Solomon, Regional Director of IOM for Central America, North America, and the Caribbean, for Raquel Vargas from RCM PPT, Costa Rica, Sebastian Sayak, Specialist from UNDP, Madam Maria Teta, Specialist from ILO, the member countries who are participating from the Regional Conference on Migration, observers, members from UN system nations, organizations from civil society, also Luis Alonso Serrano from the Executive Secretariat of the RCM, Carmen Paula Cepeda, Regional Coordinator of this regional project, and Lielis Torres, focal point of the training program. I really thank you for your participation, for your active participation and commitment, and the participation of all officers from member countries of the RCM who lived this learning by doing experience, using virtual channels to enrich their knowledge and expand their gender perspective on the prevention on sexual harassment, violence, and abuse. You have made it possible to fulfill the goals that we had in mind in the design of this project. For the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, gender equality and the prevention of violence against women is a priority topic for our government. It's reflected in our external or foreign policy and cooperation policy. And in this regard, we recognize the interest of the government in the region to raise awareness among their officers on the prevention of abuse, exploitation, and harassment of a sexual nature against women, and we recognize leadership of IM in these spaces for training, as well as the strategic partners that have accompanied us in the development of this first program of prevention and protection against sexual abuse, harassment, and exploitation in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, to say goodbye and to close, I would like to ask for a minute of silence in honor of the victims of Hurricanes Eta and Iota who have devastated Central American region these last weeks. And I also to commemorate those women who have been victims of violence in the world and to remember our commitment to eliminate this type of violence. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Joe Galbush from the Embassy of the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. Thank you for your closing remarks and for your decided support. So, Lielis and Raquel, thank you once again. We are finishing one more virtual activity this year, and I would also like to thank Laura, Paula, Eugenia, Marisol Aguilar Rodas, and the interpretation. And Lielis, you have the floor. You can say goodbye. Thank you, Luis Alonso. And from PTE Campus, I am, and everybody who was with us today for this closing ceremony, which is going to tell our participants that we're going to call on you for a session on systematization. First program in the region, we want to collect good practice and feedback on your part. So we are proposing a session, possibly at the end of this week, early next week. We will be inviting you through the RCM. Wishing you great rest of the day and the week and all the best of success. Thank you. Paola and John, just say great, and we are going to commemorate tomorrow and reflect especially on the victims of violence against women. So on my part, I would like to thank everybody and bid you a great day. Thank you.